Budget and Finance Subcommittee meeting, where we discuss a variety of things that influence finances of the Clinton Public Schools. And you know, as a subcommittee meeting, this is just coming to consensus, it's informational, we make no motions and make no decisions, perhaps come to consensus over something we may want to do at a board meeting. Jack's put out an agenda just to hit the items that we need to. Please mark out number 3.
That's really only for the
Wrong meeting.
next meeting.
And then we're going to hear from the administration on what their recommendations are.
Okay, so at this point in the year, we're now down to trying to essentially try to put a moratorium on our expenditures so that we can get as close to a dollar figure as possible for what the end of year monies will be. Typically, what we have done at this point is to look at those funds and also look at capital expenditures that are projected out that we either were removed or cut from a previous capital request, or they're on a future capital request to continue reducing future expenditures. So tonight what we'd like to do is first to have Kevin do a summary of where we stand with end of year monies and kind of an outline of where they are coming from, where those funds come from, and reasons for that. And then we will also take a look at, based on that, what we are projecting for a recommendation for use of some of those funds for capital.
As you know, at the last Board of Education meeting, we went over the reasons as to where the surplus was. This memo really just summarizes this. It's a conservative estimate. I'm projecting $790,000 at this time. And it won't change by much, but it's going to be given. So it could be slightly lower, and it could be slightly higher too. But it's a pretty good estimate. The memo summarizes it in bullet points as to where it is. Employee medical is approximately $475. As we spoke about on Monday night, there's really 3 reasons behind that. One is the medical premium insurance plan design. We also have a prescription self-insurance plan design too. So there's really 2 pieces of that, and the prescription actually was much higher than anybody anticipated. We also had an enrollment shift that we spoke about Monday night. We had a reduction of 1 employee opting out of insurance completely, and we also had a movement of 14 couple coverage. 10 went to single, and 4 went to family. So there's reasons as to why we have a surplus there. Regarding salaries, there's $200,000 of salaries surplus in there, and there were many changes in personnel between 2010 and 2011. We had 14 retirements, 10 were certified, 4 were classified, and we also, like any type of business, school, town, whatever, there are resignations. People move on. We had parents moving on to teaching jobs, maybe within the school system or with another school system. So we did have some of that, which plays off a small part of it. Heating fuel, about $100,000 right now, and it's really because of the mild winter. Now, one thing when I look at these numbers, even the heating fuel, we're still getting bills coming in, so I don't want to say at the end of the day that it's going to be exactly $100,000. Basically, looking at these numbers, I actually have to go back to the accounts and so forth and look at this year's expenditures versus last year. So last year, when I actually run the expenditure report, detail report, I have to go back and really count how the payments were and see what we have left, and sort of like project out. So right there is about $100,000. Photocopying, $40,000. We have a new district-wide new copier contract, which is under the direction of the assistant superintendent and the director of technology. They went out and really saved us more than we expected. Liability insurance, that's $38,000. Really, that's really a correction we're making in next year's budget that has had a surplus. So next year's budget does reflect a decrease in approximately that range, or pretty close to $38,000 reduction to 35. Snow plowing, $12,000, and lack of snow. Electricity, this account has been overexpended in the past, and right now we're projecting a deficit somewhere about $25,000. And transportation regular, it's really has enough with the bus contracts, it's really the higher gas and diesel that we're seeing and so forth, so that's an approximation. And of course, when you look at an operating budget, there are other pluses and minuses, those are small, they're not each other covered.
Okay. Questions? Anybody?
No? Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, that was a great explanation.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, it was, thank you. And, you know, there's understanding about these plan designs. Those are plan designs where the most savings were realized or as a result of several different negotiating sessions trying to get that design plan changed, and until it's actually used, you don't know what your savings are.
As had been discussed at a previous conversation, or previous fin meeting, to do some prep work with looking at potential capital expenditures. We've put together a list of capital expenditures in conjunction with the Building and Grounds Subcommittee, for which Phil is currently chair, and some of the technology, specific technology requests that would round out our numbers. For those of you who are looking at the numbers again, the numbers changed one more time. They actually went down from our last number, which is why people are querying, because they went up last time when we added them. They have been double checked. I had to recheck them and verify that my adding was correct. And I had, the last time around, I had, in calculating, I had left off one number, but then in double checking today, I found that we are, now this is the solid number that you should be working with, okay?
So do people have questions about these specific, or anybody want to express an opinion? Obviously, this is just conversation at the subcommittee level.
Items 1 and 2 are basically maintenance expenditures that we need to do to keep those buildings in an operational condition. And items number 3 is more towards security, the safety of our students, and also the teachers and any of the public that would be coming out of those properties. And item 4, of course, is just to improve the educational opportunities for the kids.
I think that when it comes to safety, we would be remiss if we didn't address any
1, 2, and
safety or
3.
maintenance
Yeah.
issues.
1, 2, and 3, if we don't do them, I mean, we're not doing our job.
Correct.
It's, my opinion is the same for number 4. If we don't do number 4, we've got an opportunity to do this. We're not doing the best job that we're elected to do, which is provide the best education possible for these kids.
I agree.
And it's not very much money at all.
No. Yeah, that's the smallest piece. Correct.
Anybody else want to weigh in on recommendations, or obviously this would come to a vote at the meeting tonight, but if there are any questions and you have a strong feeling one way or another, you can address it now. Well, I'll address it now.
Okay.
Okay. Well, clearly that leaves us with $622,000. And I think that the elephant in the room is that we all understand where that would go. And Kevin has addressed where that would go, and we certainly don't begrudge the town anything that they might be able to need for a rainy day. Not looking to line our pockets here.
No.
Okay. So thank you for that explanation. It's a smaller elephant, still in the room.
Thanks. Anybody else? Phil?
Yeah, Mr. Fritz. Phil Single, James Vincent Drive. Earlier this evening, I went to a Board of Education, I guess it was a budget workshop, where Kevin Kane reported on their surplus, and I was staggered to learn that the current surplus, Board of Ed, is estimated to be $790,000. I mean, even I was surprised. They listed all the areas. A lot of it is some medical insurance savings, some salary savings, and a bunch of other things. And apparently, from what I could gather from the conversation, they're going to follow the statute and go to the Board of Finance on June 11th.
Monday.
Is that Monday? Okay. And propose that they move some of the money in the expense category to capital and spend it. But that will still leave them with an estimated $622,000 of surplus. And I thought you'd like to know that. You'd know it eventually, pretty soon, I'm sure. But, you know, when some things were cut and what we thought was a necessity at the time.
Well, the problem is, again, we go back to surplus. You can't use surplus to fund operations. You don't do it because next year, if there's not a surplus, and here's the part, we have a new finance director, Kevin's been here just over a year now. He's gone through those books. He's found stuff that our previous business manager did not clean up over the years, and that's why you have such a big number over there, because the health insurance, the census for the employees was never updated. There's a lot of things that were done over there that wasn't, that the business manager didn't do, that he's picked up on, and he's trimmed. Next year, you'll see, when this budget, when we finish out this year, you're not gonna see anything close to that.
Okay, good.
And then, but here we go again, we just had 6 retirements the other day. Was it 6? Yeah, 6 retirements the other day that weren't anticipated, nobody knew about, because they don't announce.
There were only 2 before.
There were none
No,
prior to the budget.
prior to the budget
No, there were none.
going.
They didn't announce, so now you got 6 retirements, or, you know, usually between $30,000 and $40,000 on each of them that you save, and when you bring in somebody new.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I get back to, when I said to the Board of Ed chairman, when we had the budget meetings, maybe an incentive, a $5,000 or a $10,000 incentive to these people to announce by January 1 that they're gonna retire. If you're gonna save 30 or 40,000, give them 5 or 10 grand, so you know up front, so you can budget for it. It makes sense to me. Thanks. Okay. Minutes.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, Kirk, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just to add on to this, North Haven did have a $1.8 million surplus, which they moved over to their operating. By cutting $150,000, furloughing some people, all this was needless. The increase in the tax levy was not required. You could have avoided tax increase.
It's bad practice.
It may be a bad practice, but it can be done.
Any finance director that you speak to that is actually a finance director that knows budgeting will tell you not to do it. We already appropriate $250,000 out of undesignated to our revenue side of our budget, which is a bad practice to begin with, because when that goes, first time you have to touch it, you gotta take it away, because you're building a hole for the next year. State of Connecticut is famous for that. That's why we're continually running a deficit.
And just to add to that, they acknowledge tonight that this was by statute. The last few years, the Board of Education has just spent this money without going to the Board of Finance.
Don't know they've gone to the Board of Finance.
I don't believe so.
They have.
They go to this Board of Finance every spring, Carol, I'm at every meeting, and they go and they say, these are the things they want to do. Since Pete was chairman of the Board of Finance, these are the things we want to do, and they say, okay. And then they reduce their capital budget for the following year based on that. Well, I'm sorry, I'm there. I live the dream, I'm there.
Yeah.
We had a discussion in our last meeting that talked about there was some misunderstanding or misinterpretation on, depending on whose side you want to sit on whether or not the school board can take any excess funds and apply them to capital.
Yes, I can answer or address that. There really are, as the attorneys would say, it depends. That's their caveat. There are really 2 parts of the answer. One is that statutorily, the governing body for anything, for spending monies beyond operational monies, goes back to the financial authority of the community, so in this case, the Board of Finance. So that any monies that, strictly speaking, from the statutory standpoint, that would be expended for capital would, or according to statute, would be governed by the Board of Finance. So they would say to us, or we would go to them and say, here's what our plan is, blah, 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 and they could give it the seal of approval and therefore turn it into a capital expense at that point. The other part of that is the practice that a community operates under, which has been, to this point, that the Board of Finance has, in effect, done tacit approval, or part of the practice has been that the Board of Finance, or Board of Ed, makes a recommendation, approves a recommendation for expenditure of operational money for capital, and communicates that to the Board of Finance, and allows them, basically they allow that to occur without an official recommendation from the Board of Finance. That has been the practice in the community. So long as that is the practice, that the Board of Finance were to continue that practice, that could be done in that way without jeopardy, because they have since made that decision. What we are projecting at this point is that with a recommendation from the Board of Ed, we would go to the Board of Finance and make that request for their recommendation and approval at this point, based on the information that has been, there's that point where as you dig and you get more information, and this is what we're being advised to do at this point, is to say, here's what we recommend. Get their approval for that to occur officially now. So that's the intent.
Okay. So is that clear?
So we make a recommendation that these are the things that we think we need, but the Board of Finance ultimately makes a decision.
Right. Based on what we have been, based on the practice that has been okayed, if you will, or approved by the Board of Finance and previously, we just needed to communicate to them what we were going to do. But at this point, based on the information that we have, what we are intending to do is seek their recommendation for this amount, or whatever portion of this amount that the board approves, to go forward and get their approval for it, to make it. Yes.
No, the area is kind of clear as mud.
Yeah.
And it is fuzzy, because, it's fuzzy at this point, because that is not how they have operated up to this point. And, I think there have been a number of questions that have been raised, and everybody's sensitivity to that is heightened, so that we want to, we're not doing anything any different than we would in terms of the legitimacy of using this money for specific items. We're not making stuff up, kind of thing. The issue is really the procedural component from the Board of Finance.
Okay. So I have a question to ask you. So if it was two operating budgets, and let's say the Board of Finance decides that they don't want to do that, we give back the money towards them, do they put it into their operation for the town side?
Directly
or
into
where
the
does it
general
go?
fund.
General fund, to be used in the year of this budget.
No, it's just gonna be, it just goes in the reserve, it's like a rainy day fund.
Okay.
It's not to be used in next year's budget, it's
So
the money that's sitting aside that can be designated at a later time. It's like with the Hurricane Irene, where, there was an emergency, they had to designate money from fund balance to pay all those bills, so.
Okay.
It just goes in the rainy, people talk about reserves, it goes right there. It's at the end of this fiscal year, whatever happens on Board of Education budget, town budget, I don't want to call it the surplus, but whatever remains, the available balance, if that gets closed right out, it just gets closed out, but at the same time, there's a revenue component that actually has to, exceed or whatever. It's a surplus of that, set the revenue streams.
Is everybody clear?
Makes sense.
Clear as mud? Yeah. What we're trying to do is be as above board as possible for things that would be capital projects. How does the board feel about that? Get a consensus at the committee level. Obviously, we make no motions here, and when we go into the Board of Education meeting, we'll see how the group feels as a whole. And what Jack's alluding to is that in anticipation that we would want to do some of this based on previous subcommittee meetings, we have requested to go before the Board of Finance on the 11th. And Brad has sent out, I think he added this to the agenda. So we would go forward and explain whatever happens at our board meeting, say, here's what the Board of Education has decided, here are the excess funds that we're aware of to this date, don't hold us to the absolute penny, and this is what we would like to request, and the board as a group has approved. Now it's in your hands, what would you like